Every writer knows that the best conversations about writing don't happen in classrooms or symposia or any fancy artisanal setting. They happen at the bar, usually after deadline. That's the vibe we're going for here. This is The Other 51, conversations with writers of all genres about writing. I'm Brian Moritz. Today's guest is Jesse Dougherty of The Washington Post. Jesse Dougherty, welcome to The Other 51. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
This is a first for me. It's my first former student coming back to join me on the podcast. It's exciting. It's a News 205 reunion.
I bet it's not the last former student you'll have, though.
Probably.
That's a nod to your teaching. I'm sure you'll have a bunch on here someday.
You're too kind, and thank you for that. But yeah, Jesse was my student when you were a sophomore at Newhouse or freshman?
Sophomore.
You were a sophomore at the Newhouse School at Syracuse, and I was finishing up my doctoral work, and I was teaching Introduction to News Writing and Reporting. And Jesse was, except for the fact that he lost the News 205 Trivia Cup on the last question, outstanding student, and I'm happy to see you've had success so far in the profession.
Thanks so much. I think I got a F for a fact error. I think that was your rule, right? If you had like a name spelled wrong, you get an automatic F. I remember getting an F. Yeah.
It was funny because that was actually, I can say this now, I don't think it's a state secret, that's actually a Steve Davis rule. That's because the new way News 205 works is so many adjuncts and grad students teach it that there's a standard syllabus that we all follow. So it was a Newhouse rule that we did it. Well, one thing I wanted to, I've talked a lot about St. Bonaventure on this podcast, but I should note that I got 2 degrees from Syracuse and only got 1 from Bonaventure, and you're an SU guy itself. And I'm wondering if you can kind of talk about, to start off, what makes Newhouse and SU, that we all know the reputation Newhouse School has for journalism and for broadcasting and for media, but as someone who's gone through it and graduated from there, now in the field, I mean, what is it that kind of sets Syracuse apart? Like, what gives Newhouse that reputation, do you find? I
think and you know how difficult it is, and I know you do a great job of it, but it's really extremely hard to learn how to write and report in a classroom. It's just I feel like you probably struggle with it all the time, just how do I teach this? And as a learner, it's how do I get better from here? And I think obviously they do a great job of that. Just all the professors there have been doing it for a long time, and they have a good mix of new people and innovative practices for that. And I think that was always something that that stood out to me. It's well, I'm learning how to do this in a classroom, and that's rare. So this place is probably doing a pretty good job. And then the other thing is just the alumni base that for me kind of opened up through the student newspaper, the Daily Orange, but also is through Newhouse as well, is you can just reach out to hundreds of people around the country, and because you can just say in the email subject, saying hello from Syracuse, or it's saying hello from the Daily Orange, it just lends that first connection to you that allows you to just reach out. And that's how I got sort of internships in college. That's how I got people to read my things and give me advice and hopefully get better and all those things. And that to me was that alumni base and all the connections I was able to build just on the fact that I went to Syracuse and bared a few really tough winters was really great. It's you earned it at that point. I mean, my eyebrows and nose hair is all frozen, so I should get a few good connections out of it. But I would say that was probably the biggest thing.
So do you have a best Jim Boeheim story?
I was writing a story about Mike Hopkins, his assistant coach, my senior year, and I covered the team for 2 years, so I got to kind of hang around the coach's office a little bit just because I kind of knew Hopkins. And I was in the office, and I asked someone in the office, is Jim around? Could I just go ask him about Hop? I never got him for the story. I got him through press conferences and whatnot. But he's in his office. If you want to ask him, you can. I'm I kind of was hoping you'd ask him. So here I am, and I'm I walk in, and I kind of knock on the side of the door. It's open, and I say, hey, do you have time to talk to me? And he has the New York Times open, and he's has it out, and he's I'm busy, and he's smirking because clearly he's not. And I was okay, I guess that means you're busy. So I just kind of backpedaled out of the room and went on my way. But I thought that was really funny because he knew what he was doing. But.
Right. I had one like that too. When Dante Green was in high school, he played in a high school tournament in Binghamton. And the big Stop DWI tournament every Christmas time. And so Dante Green's team's playing, and Boeheim comes to watch. I mean, Green had already, I think, signed by this point. Like, he was already definitely going to Syracuse. And so Boeheim's sitting up in the stands with a bucket of popcorn. And me and a TV reporter friend of mine, Matt Hobbs, would go up there, and we just, want to talk to, say, can we talk about Dante Green? Want to ask about, watching him, da-da-da-da, just, boilerplate stuff. And he shakes his head, like, NCAA rules, I can't talk about them. And I look at him, I'm like, I didn't confront him because I'm like, okay, he knows what he's doing. I'm like, no, he's signed.
He already signed.
No, yeah, no, okay. Boeheim's so much fun. He's such an interesting dude. I've had a few interactions with him, and it is funny how like accessible he is. Like, you can walk in his office and see him reading his newspaper. I remember the standing line is you call him for an interview. You just call his office, and half the time he'll pick up the phone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, you go straight to him a lot of the time. And in my 2 years covering, I mean, I did get a lot of access to him, just whether it was walking by the practice court. But he always says, my press conferences are an awesome classroom, and it's the best classroom a college kid can have. And, sometimes you're like, well, it's just Boeheim being Boeheim and kind of pumping himself up. But at the same time, like, he actually made you put a question mark at the end of your questions.
Oh, okay.
Which is like, that's like, and which is a really good lesson when you're sitting there and you're like, you got, sometimes you do those leading questions and you're in a press conference and you're like, you guys had a lot of turnovers tonight. And he's like, and you're like, and some came in the second half. And he's like, and he's like, sort of just trying to get you like, and you're like, was that a difference in the game? No. Okay. All right. Next question. It's like, so he is good. It was really good to learn how to actually interact in press conferences and whatnot. That was really educational.
So if you could just kind of briefly talk about your career path and your job now and kind of how you got there.
Sure. So I left Syracuse in May 2016 after graduating with degrees in newspaper and online journalism and political science. I went to the LA Times as a summer intern. I then was extended into the fall after my summer internship covering at first college football, then the NBA as the backup reporter for the Clippers and Lakers, doing all the home games and stuff like that. And then last December, so 2 Decembers ago now, I was time flies. I was sort of kept on as the LA Kings beat writer, sort of on like a kind of contract, not anything full time, but covering the team, traveling, doing all that. First hockey game I ever saw live was my first game covering for the LA Times.
Really?
Yeah, which was an experience. And then in January, I applied for a job at the Washington Post covering high schools. I got that job, started February 6th, 2016. So now I've been doing that for almost a year, coming up on a year. And the job now is really kind of like a features job. I do a lot of longer form stories on high school athletes. I back up on the Washington Capitals, so I do a lot of hockey coverage still here. And then kind of also cover the area day to day a little bit, doing basketball and stuff like that in the DMV district, Maryland and Virginia. But a lot of it's feature stuff, so it's really like I got really lucky, I feel like, and just I get a lot of time to work on things, get a lot of space to write them. It's like a very unique situation, I feel like, and very thankful for it all the time.
So I want to get to the Post in a second, but I got to get back to the first hockey game you ever saw live was one that you were covering for the LA Times.
Yeah.
So when you get that assignment, now you had watched hockey like on TV at some point, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, so you get that assignment. Walk me through what are you thinking, and how do you prep for that?
Yeah. So Helene Elliott is at the LA Times, and she's just like a staple of the hockey writing community. I don't quote me on this. As we're on a podcast, I say don't quote me on this. I think she was the first female beat writer in the NHL full time. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure. I know she's in the Hall of Fame, and she's just exceptional. And I remember calling her and then picking her brain just over and over and over, and just the smallest things. And then we actually traveled together to San Jose for that game, and she was writing a column and I was doing the game. So I actually got to sit with her. So I shouldn't say I was like totally alone thrown into the fray. But I will always say that Helene Elliott taught me how to write about hockey, and I feel very grateful for that as well. That was like a few long drives in the car. She's like weaving through traffic on the San Jose highway and like telling me like, and you never write that they've won the Stanley Cup twice. There's only one Stanley Cup. So you have to that we've won the Stanley. She's all these like crazy rules, and it's like it was awesome. I mean, it was like those. I'll never forget that stuff. So.
Right, that's like getting a master's degree in hockey writing to be able to sit with her.
Yeah, it was like over like 3 days, and it continued. Like she would email me or we would talk on the phone, but like that sort of crash course leading into me starting on the beat it was awesome.
So I wanted to ask about being, what's it like to be working at the Washington Post right now? Not just with all the stuff happening politically and everything happening with the news side, but with the movie out now, with the Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks movie about the Pentagon Papers. And so, I mean, just kind of what's it like being at the Washington Post at this moment in time?
It's interesting. Like maybe more than any other newspaper right now, it's like sort of this pop culture symbol too. Mm-hmm. You can't really mention like that you work at the Washington Post without inviting one of those two things, right? Oh, politics, or the movie. Which like a lot of times, like you just say you work at a newspaper, and someone's like, the usual first question is, what do you cover? Mm-hmm. Now, when I say I work at the Washington Post, the first questions are one of those two things. Like, is it crazy with the current administration, or have you seen the movie? And my answer to those two things, I will have to admit, the first is I don't work on the politics side, and the second is I haven't seen the movie. So I haven't seen the movie yet. They did a screening for us as a staff, which was awesome, but I was traveling for an assignment, so I wasn't able to see it. But I'm going to get around to it. But it's interesting. It is interesting to know that sort of when you bring that up in conversation, whether that's bar side or even with family members, that it's sort of taken on a life of its own as this the Post is sort of whether it's through Twitter or whatever the reason, it's sort of taken on this life of its own. So it's definitely an interesting time to be there.
Just out of curiosity, do you feel any kind of, I don't know if pressure's the right word or weight's the right word, but now that you're writing for the Washington Post, I mean, in the pantheon of newspapers in the U.S., that's top 3, top 5, wherever you rank it, do you feel, does that kind of, do you ever think about that? Like, I'm writing this for the Washington Post. Or is that
probably like all the time. Yeah. No, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but yeah, I think about that all the time. And it's not necessarily like, I don't even know if it's the name of the paper, honestly. Maybe that's me being a little bit lost on history. But I think it's like looking around, you could go into the newsroom any single day and you could just look around in the sports section, the people there, and it's like, what? Like I'm sharing the pages with that, like, Ken Babb's there and Rick Mace and Adam Kilgore and Roman Stubbs and Jerry Brewer and Candace Buckner, and it goes on. I mean, I could just like go. I literally just named people that were there yesterday. It's everyone that you look around and like. I don't really believe that at 23 years old I'm sharing the pages with them, and it does make you want to like impress them first and foremost. It's like, who are you writing for? Like, yeah, I'm writing for the readership and I'm writing for other people, but like when one of those people tell me like great job, it's like, okay, I could take a month off. Like it's like I feel good now. But really it makes you want to just work that much harder. So
one thing I did want to spend some time talking about was a feature that you did. I don't know when it published this past weekend as we're recording this. I forget the actual day, but it was about Mya Fourstar, an American Indian basketball player in Idaho. Am I remembering the story correctly?
Montana.
I'm sorry. Montana.
Frazer, Montana. No worries.
And I mean, I will link to this in show notes. It's a wonderful, wonderful feature.
Thanks so much.
Really, really well done. So I want to talk a little bit about the reporting and writing of that. But first of all, I'm curious. Montana's a long way from D.C. and from the DMV area. So how did you find out about this story to begin with?
We have an editor. We actually have like an odd contingent of Montana people in our sports section. So Roman Stubbs, as I mentioned, is from Montana. He covers the University of Maryland. David Larimer, who is our college's editor, is from Billings in Montana. And then we have like a social media producer who used to be in our section, went to Montana. So it's like for a newspaper on the East Coast, like that's as Montana as you can get. And the editor who's from Montana brought it to my editor's attention, just said, hey, and it was a story in the Billings Gazette by Jeff Welsh. And like anytime I talk about this story, I need to plug Jeff Welsh's story because it was very well done. And it was sort of similarly themed. It was done last year about Mya and just like her basketball dream. And there was a quote in there that sort of I kind of used as the thesis to build off of for my story. That was essentially, I live in this town that sort of is affected by drugs and affected by teen pregnancy, and I want to get out. And basketball, I think, is my ticket out. And for me, like a lot of the stories I like to tell are young people at this critical point of their lives. So she's now 16 years old, and for me, it's like there was no question when I was 16 that I was going to go to college. And there was no question that I would be able to, whether it was through financial aid or, whatever, and loans, but just to see someone in a situation where she has to question so much that she could even do that. To me, that resonated. And it did sort of help, I think, story-wise, that it was in such a remote place. There's something kind of interesting and weirdly romantic about, like, the town on the side of the highway. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, that's where it formed. It was a story in the Billings Gazette that I sort of branched off of, got in touch with the family from there, and then and ended up in Montana.
So how long did you spend reporting on that story?
So I was working on some longer projects this fall that kept me really busy, but during that I was doing like weekly phone calls with Mya and her family. So we would check in like on Tuesdays and just sort of. So I kind of wanted to have like a really good idea of what my story would look like without any scene or color before I even went.
Okay.
So I wanted to I didn't want to go in there and have to like sit down with her and be like, so, what's your favorite color? Or whatever. It's like, what kind of music do you listen to? Like, before I went, I feel like I knew everything I could about her without actually seeing and meeting her. Okay. And that was really my goal. So I probably started that in October, just doing that. I talked to professors, American Indian sports experts, people from the Montana American Indian Hall of Fame, just trying to. I read a few books, just trying to get my knowledge wider on the subject. Read like every Gary Smith story ever written that he wrote about Native American basketball players because they are excellent. And that was the process. And then actually on the ground, I was there for 4 days. Okay. I went in mid-December. Took 1 day to travel because it's hard to get there. 4 days on the ground and then another day to travel. So it ended up being like a 6-day trip actually reporting.
And one of the things that stands out to me in your writing of the story was just kind of like the details of the town and the details mm-hmm. of the environment. And it's such a hard thing, I think, especially with young writers, especially the ones I teach. It's like, how do you pick the right details? Because like you can have kind of like the laundry list of details, but how do you know like what adds to the story, and then what's just kind of like a laundry list of stuff you see? So how, like, kind of walk me through that reporting and note taking and editing, that whole process of kind of describing the environment and being on the ground.
Sure. I would say like the first thing is like whatever stood out to you most. Mm-hmm. I think because like it was easy, like there was this grain elevator that was like very descriptive, and like it was rusted, and the door was like off the hinge, and it hasn't been used for 10 years. Mm-hmm. But like, to be honest, I don't even really know what a grain elevator is used for, so that didn't resonate with me.
Grain.
Yeah, but like to do what? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. So like that to me was like I could have written that really well, I think, but it didn't really like when I saw it. It wasn't like whoa. But when I saw like the burnt down church that's mentioned in the story, that to me was like, okay, like this, like no one's running to replace this. It's sort of just like rubble on the plains. Like it's that like, so I think like initial reaction was a big thing. And I sort of like underlined in my notebook or write that like, wow, things like that. And then something that I didn't do for this story, but I probably should have, and I would do on other situations is like find a buddy, someone who's like removed from the story. And for me, usually a non-sports reader. Someone that's not a big sports person, like maybe my mom or, someone of that sort that I could say, like, what to you is most indicative of a town that's sort of been forgotten? Is it a burnt down church? Is it a grain elevator that doesn't work? Is it the fact that there's only 2 stores or 1 gas pump? And some of those mm-hmm. things, it's not that I didn't use one detail. I used probably like 6 or 7. But I would say maybe like something I've used in the past, and I didn't for this, is like I'm trying to depict this. What from this list of things is sort of indicative of that? What makes you think of that theme or that sort of concept?
So, and you mentioned the legwork you were doing before you even went out there. Doing the reading and talking to Mya and her family. How important was that to kind of making the final story as deep as it was and as kind of well rounded as it was?
I think it was fairly important because the biggest thing it did was help me build a relationship, even though it was still hard to do over the phone. Mm-hmm. like the best interview I had with Mya still was like in her room the last day I was there, which was 5 phone conversations later plus 4 days together in Frazer. And like that was still the best conversation we had was at the end, because that's just natural. But I know, like, I had known her aunt Sasha, who's sort of the other main character in the story, and like the second I got there, she came to my hotel and just like, get in the car. You know, it was like, it wasn't even like there was no discomfort. It was just, I was like, we were in, and then we're driving down the highway, and she's like, and this is this, and this is this, and like she's actually the mayor, as you find out in the story, which is like something she just like stumbled upon. And so I had the mayor of Frazer showing me around Frazer, which I'd say like the lesson I learned, and this is sort of the first time I just parachuted into an entirely foreign place, is that like have a guide that you can rely on. And they don't necessarily need to be like so connected to the story. They just need to kind of understand what you're doing and show you around. But in this case, Sasha was a really good guide. And we spent that whole first morning I was there with Mya in school just driving around, which, to be honest, does not take long in Frazer, Montana. It's really small. We just spent the whole day driving around and talking about that house that burned down and that family who moved in when the war happened. You know, it was like whatever it was. There were stories about everyone. So my notebook was so full, I just had to kind of parse through it.
I was the same. That's got to be the biggest challenge when you come back. You spend 5 days out there. You got all this detail. You got the great interviews. You got all this research you've done. Now, kind of walk me through getting back to your apartment or wherever you wrote and opening the computer, and how do you turn that into a story?
Sure. I actually had a quick turnaround on this. So I got back. It ended up not running quickly, but I was going on vacation for the holidays, so I wanted to file it by like the Wednesday after I got back. Okay. So I had like 2 days. And the one sort of good thing about this trip is, like, I think if you were reporting on a feature in let's say New York City or Chicago or LA, you might want to go out at night or see friends you have in the area or, you know, whatever, like see the sights. Whereas like where I was, like when I got home at night, there was nothing to do. So like there was 3 channels on the TV in the hotel. So it's like, you know, so I wrote or I typed out my notes. Like I did a lot of things that you would normally do after you're finished with reporting. So it was the most I've ever like worked in real time on a story. So like that's like the lead was from Saturday, and I got home Saturday and wrote the lead.
Okay.
So I was like flying home to DC with a lead, which, like, to be honest, like made me feel great. And I never really write that way. Usually I'm finished with the reporting process, and then we'll go back if I need to like sprinkle in details I don't have or tie up loose ends. But like I was actually doing this in real time, knowing my deadline was tight, having nothing to do. So when I actually sat down, I sort of had a pretty good idea for how this would be. But I will say the biggest challenge with this story for me was that nothing really happened when I was there. And she played 2 games, so that gave some tension. But like generally, like they sat around the house and she looked at her iPhone a lot because she's 16. And like you can pick a 4-day period in someone's life and hope that it's interesting. But it also is like if someone just followed me the last 4 days, I would have went to work and then went to dinner and then came home and sat in my apartment and read on my laptop. And that would not be – it's just a random 4-day sample size. And I was glad it wasn't interesting. I was glad it was just her life. And I shouldn't say it wasn't interesting at all. But I mean, like there was nothing that was like, whoa.
There wasn't like, that big dramatic event like she gets the scholarship offer or something like that or anything like that. Yeah. Or like, you know, or something like the town sort of known as not being that safe, and there was nothing sort of that happened that felt unsafe. People could tell you that, but I didn't really experience any of that. So I don't know. So that was like when I sat down to write, I was like, what happened while I was there? But that sort of was indicative too. I was like, well, kind of nothing. And that's sort of what life is like there. And so I tried to sort of get that across a bit in the writing as well. But that was probably the biggest writing challenge. But honestly, I wrote it pretty fast. 1, because I had to, and 2, just because there was a lot of – I sort of had this couple flights to think about how I was going to structure it and whatnot. So it wasn't too difficult to sort of get through. I think that's such an important lesson, I think, for a lot of students and a lot of younger writers. You know, so many times just you'll come back and like nothing happened at this thing, or you get the data and there's nothing interesting, and like there's not that big, you know, revelatory moment or that big kind of like thing that you're looking for. And sure. I try to tell students that like that's a story. If there's nothing there, that can be a story. Like the absence of a big, you know, the absence of anything happening is definitely part of the story. The absence of something can be as much a story as finding that big aha moment. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a line I had in there that I think I even cut out before sending to my editor, but it was like there are 2 things to do in Frazer, Montana: play basketball and wait. But that was like almost as much as like my reporting experience as their actual lives. Like I watched them play basketball and then I waited. And I was like, I think we were all doing that, to be honest, at some point. just like, well, whatever's next. Wait for the next game. Wait for the scholarship offer to come. Wait for something good to happen. But it's not always the case. But
I guess you've kind of talked about this, but kind of on a bigger issue. Coming from being a reporter, coming from a big East Coast city, going into a small town in Montana, and especially a small town Montana with a Native American population. And so what kind of challenges do you present on that from a kind of reporting or like coming at it from yourself? I'm phrasing this in a weird way, but like, is it weird, like you mentioned parachuting in and to not be the big city guy writing about the small town, the yokels out in Montana, or any kind of stereotype issues you could get into writing about Native Americans? So how did that come into your mind as you were writing or reporting this?
It came in my mind a lot. That was sort of the biggest challenge for me, was one, not writing about a reservation in a way that read like a white person seeing a reservation for the first time, and two, not sort of. I guess the problem is, if I was there for a month, I would have taken those 4 days with no notebook and no recorder, and just probably more than 4 days, maybe 5 or 6 or whatever, and just walked around Frazer and met people and whatever. But I sort of was in go mode because I had to be. I knew I had sort of the first game I was at, I was notebook writing down everything. I couldn't just watch because I needed to report on it. So in a different situation, like if that reservation were in Maryland, 30 minutes from my apartment, I would have probably spent a lot more time just going and introducing myself. The fact that I was in Montana and couldn't go back ever weighed on me a lot too. But that was tough. I mean, I spent a lot of time talking with American Indian professors and a lot of people from different tribes and reservations about, verbiage. What do I call people? How do I write about this? How do I ask what to call people without being offensive? I mean, it's one step further. And it's like, that was a lot of that. But at the end of the day, I was the big city reporter coming in and writing about the small town girl in Montana. Then I never was not going to be. So I had to sort of find a way to be that respectfully, because there was no like hiding that. I mean, how I did that, I don't know. You sort of could read quickly if someone didn't want to talk to you, quickly. It was very apparent. We weren't totally, and I don't want to get into stuff that maybe wasn't in the story too much, but there was no red carpet for us. So that maybe that's the best way to say it. And sort of one angle of the story is about how success is sort of viewed in reservation culture, and how a lot of times people are resentful of young people who are having success because maybe they didn't have it themselves, maybe their kids aren't having it, so they don't really want to see each other do well. And the sort of the old adage is a crab bucket, which is the crab closest to the top gets pulled back down on the reservation. And I heard that. I only was comfortable writing that because I heard it from literally 11 people.
Wow.
And like, this place is a crab bucket. And I was like, oh, all right, put it on the tally. That's 6. It's like crab bucket, 7. I mean, really, and so I wouldn't have written. I don't live there. I don't know it enough to be confident saying that. But the fact that it got up that high, I was like, okay, well, I can write that. So just knowing that theme and that sort of idea of success on the reservation, you can sort of imagine how I was received by some people, is what I'll say.
Yeah. What's the best thing you've read lately?
Best thing I've read lately? John Woodrow Cox's series on gun violence in America. Okay. And I read it over the course of 2017, but I just finished it, so I will say that. I don't know John personally. I really want to. So, John, if you're listening, I would love to get lunch with you or something. He's like a superstar reporter at the Post, someone I really aspire to write like and approach stories like. And he did this series in 2017 that was how gun violence affects kids and teenagers in America. It was a 6-part series, ended with a story from Virginia on a kid who sort of, I mean, depending how you read it or look at it, but the idea is that he threatened to harm cops so the cops would kill him. It's like, I think it's called like suicide by cop or suicide. I think that's sort of the official term. And another one's focused on a young kid who was shot in the head in Cleveland, and sort of he survived, but It was pretty jarring and just really important work the whole way through. And I just finished it the other day, the 6th part that came out in late December. So I will give that the nod of the best thing I've read recently.
Excellent. I'm not going to say the Mya Fourstar story is, although it might be, but that feels really weird to say it to the guy who wrote it. And I'm writing to you. It feels like I'm sucking up. But I'm going to go with a comic series that I just started reading, The Unwritten. Oh. It's a fantasy comic. It's kind of like... It's got like Harry Potter-ish themes. It's really kind of hard to describe. It's kind of set about a fictional character who might not be fictional. Just really a really interesting story and really beautifully drawn. So I will put a link to that to show notes if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, cool. All right, Jesse, if people want to follow your work, where's the best place they can find you?
I would say Twitter. I'm at Dougherty, DOUGHERTY _ Jesse, JESSE. Put all my stuff on there. I like to pin the article that I'm sort of most proud of at the moment, which is like a cool little Twitter trick. So yeah, that's the best place. And if you follow me there's a link to my email in the bio. So if you ever want to reach out for any reason, please do.
Awesome. And such a journalist move to automatically spell the name.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I can't assume that anyone knows it. So.
It was funny. When I was working in Binghamton, Tony Kornheiser would come, and whenever Binghamton played UMBC, he'd come to the game as the alum, and he'd talk on radio, and I talked to him a few times. And he mentioned one day, like, this is such the old newspaper guy that he is, he mentioned his buddies that he went to school with that he came to the game. And as he said their names, he just, without blinking, just spelled them out. First name, last name. I'm like, that is such an old newspaper move. That was so cool.
No, it definitely is. I just wish everyone would talk to me that way in my life. It's like everyone I talk to, spell your name, please. What's your age? It's like that's everyone would just introduce themselves. We can make a pact worldwide. Right. Introduce ourselves that way. It would make all of our lives a lot easier. But,
I like it. All right, Jesse, This was awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
As always, thanks for listening to The Other 51. You can find show notes for this episode and all our episodes at sportsmediaguy.com on the Other 51 tab. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. I can highly recommend Overcast for this. Our theme music is by Ellie Moritz.